Is a Glock in 9mm a better concealed carry choice than a 1911 and 45 ACP? Some people are going to say, oh, hell yeah, and others are going to say, are you out of your mind? It's an emotional subject, and it's admittedly opening up a can of worms, but we're going to tackle that today on the Dr. Drake 63 channel. I hope you enjoy. Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today. And if there's one thing that you can guarantee is going to rile a bunch of people off and piss them off, it's to tell them that their 1911 and 45 caliber isn't as good as a Glock in 9mm. Let's check this out today, and hopefully not too many people will get pissed off. Between comments on this particular channel and things I've seen in terms of social media comments, discussions I've participated on just this last week alone, I've seen the most preposterous comments made about the Glock you'll ever see, and it's from people that hate them. They hate this firearm because it's made out of polymer. They probably hate it because there's people always talking about how great they are and comparing them favorably to any firearm that's ever been made. And I'm certainly not one of those guys. But I have heard Glocks called trash, that you need to spend an extra $500 on to make them work like a real gun, and all sorts of erroneous statements that just aren't true. They're not true because I know. I've shot thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds through Glocks, and I'm one that never replaces the sights. I never replace the triggers, springs, any of that stuff. I just shoot the hell out of them all the time. So when somebody says you need to spend another $500 to make a Glock work like a real gun, I will challenge you to that statement any day. You are clearly ignorant about Glocks. Now, for a long time, this was your comparison. Some kind of 1911 to some kind of Glock. Here's what a lot of people kind of consider to be the standard basic 1911 for a long time. A Colt government model. This is a Series 80. And it's a nice 1911, without a doubt. What are we talking about? Today, specifically, we're talking about these firearms for concealed carry. We're not talking about these firearms in terms of which is a better gun. We're not talking about which is better for shooting at a target at 50 or 100 yards. We're not talking about which round is better at distance, 45 ACP or 9mm. What we're talking about is if you need to conceal and carry a firearm, and you need to be able to put rounds with human stopping energy on target from what are considered legal self-defense distances, which certainly is not 50 yards. Which of these two firearms is better? Now, this one is the Glock 43X. Okay. My daily carry for a long time has been the Glock 19. I thought about bringing that out, but to prove my point, I actually wanted to pick something that was even smaller. Something that some people would refer to as just a toy, because it's not very big. Well, when we stack this up, and we compare that to the size of this 1911, it kind of looks like a toy, doesn't it? It kind of looks like a toy. It's easy to come to the conclusion that because something doesn't necessarily have a lot of size to it, that it's got to be a toy. Well, let's see how much this toy weighs with a full magazine. 1 pound, 7 ounces. Okay. Let's see how much this toy, I should say this non-toy, weighs with a full magazine. 2 pounds, 11 ounces. So you're going to have given up over a pound to carry this big dog. Let's talk about, from a self-defense perspective, let's talk about what you get for that extra weight and size. Now, when talking about holstering the 1911, I don't go in the waistband with this. It just simply doesn't work for me. But I've got a nice out-of-the-waistband minimalist leather holster that you can see right here. From a comfort standpoint, this is going to ride a little bit higher than an in the waistband, and so in terms of riding in the car and stuff like that, I'm going to feel it more. But you can see fairly accessible, and I don't think it printed too much. Obviously, with a 1911, you're either going to carry it cocked and locked like this, or you're going to be in a situation where you need to pull the hammer back with your thumb before your first shot and remember and train to do that. It is a good-sized firearm for sure. Now, looking at this small Glock, does it print noticeably less than the 1911? Yeah, I think it does. I feel it poking in my side a heck of a lot less. It's obviously a lot smaller, and I can carry that inside the waistband. To me, that has advantages in terms of brushing up against stuff. And as you see, I don't have to worry about working a hammer or anything of that nature. It's striker fired. You pull the trigger, and it's ready to go. And again, it's rides lower, and it's more of a concealable option. It's definitely a lighter weight option. Now, most people, I think, believe that when they are going to draw a firearm in self-defense, it's going to look like this, where you look around and you make a decision and you pull your firearm out and you get all sorts of time to decide what you're going to do before you have to do it. But I think in reality, it's probably more like this, where you find yourself all of a sudden in a tough situation. You're at very close range and you need to be able to ward somebody off. Is there an advantage to either model in that particular instance? I can't say. Again, I'm not here to tell you I think a Glock is a better firearm than a 1911. 1911's been around a long time, proven itself. But for compact size, lighter weight, and concealed carryability, yes, I do think it is better. On the left, you have a 10-round magazine. That is for the Glock. That's with hollow point plus P 9mm ammunition. And on your right, you have 230 grain ball ammunition, which is the 45 ACP. If you're comparing these two rounds in terms of both of them being full metal jacket type of rounds, I think the advantage tends to go in that scenario to the ball ammo on the right. But in terms of modern plus P ammunition, hollow points, and so forth in the 9mm, it's been shown that penetration, stopping ability necessary for a two-legged hominid, things of that nature, there's absolutely no loss of advantage at all with plus P 9mm versus using traditional 45 ACP ammo. Now, yes, you can get beefier plus P type 45 ammo. A lot of the older guns don't like it. Hollow points tend to have their feeding issues in 45 ACP in the 1911 platform, maybe not so much in other platforms. And I know a lot of things can be done to 1911s in a modern version to make them more responsive and things of that nature. But in terms of just looking at these magazines, here you've got 7 rounds in a single stack. Here you've got 10 rounds in what I'll call a quasi single stack. It's actually a staggered single stack. And, 7+1 versus 10+1, ballistically in terms of lethality, all basically being the same at closer distances especially. Is there really an advantage to carrying this big stick around? Is it going to be that much more accurate inside, say, 30 feet? Probably not, especially when you're firing it in a hurry. Is it going to have advantages in terms of, does it matter that a 45 will make someone bleed out quicker than a 9mm? No, not at self-defense distances. You want to be able to get shot placement in such a way that basically you need to take out the nervous system to stop somebody from coming, and that's true even if you're shooting a 44 Magnum. So when people get into these big, long discussions about caliber in terms of their firearm, which one's better, which one's a man-stopper, for the most part, there are no man-stopper handgun cartridges. That's a myth. Larger caliber will cause someone to bleed out quicker, but again, in a self-defense situation, in a self-defense type of distance, what does that really do for you? Not really much. And that's why when you see the most common fatality that's inflicted by any caliber every year is the 22 long rifle. It really makes you wonder about stuff. But the bottom line is, guys, it's all about shot placement. But don't take my word for it. Listen to somebody like Larry Vickers, who has years of Delta Force experience and firearms training experience. Larry basically says it's a no-brainer just because modern hollow points are the way to go. Now, if you don't have the option of hollow points and you're just looking at ball or FMJ, 45's the way to go. He does establish the caveat of effective hits on target. Or if you've ever heard of Wilson Combat, they're known for some of the best 45s you can get. And Bill Wilson, the owner and founder of Wilson Combat, basically says that with modern advances in the performance capabilities of 9mm, he has to admit, versus 45, it's a better round. Okay, I know what some of you were thinking. Dude, you're nuts. You've just got yourself a new little Glock pistol and you think it's the greatest thing that's since sliced bread, and you're going to tell us that this is better than a 1911 or that 9mm is better than 45 ACP. Kinda. Pistol-wise, firearms-wise, no, I'm not telling you that. I don't think that this little Glock is better than a 1911. I think the 1911 is a proven platform. It's been modified to a degree. It does have its limitations, but I think it's a great firearm, and it does a lot of things that a Glock simply can't do, or can it? We can think about that in another video. But the point is I'm not here to knock the 1911. I know there's guys that live and breathe by that. If we were going to talk about just what's my favorite gun to shoot and carry, I wouldn't be talking about this little Glock either. If we were going to carry and conceal carry our favorite firearms, I'd be much more apt to want to carry this 29-2 from Smith & Wesson than I would this little guy. I enjoy shooting this firearm a lot more. I also think this is a more accurate and a more powerful firearm by a long shot than the 9mm Glock that I've been talking about, or any 9mm for that matter. But that's not the point. We're looking at a specific use, and that's concealed carry. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I consider to be my 4 C's of concealed carry. I consider comfort. That's C number 1. It has to be comfortable enough that you're going to carry that firearm with you everywhere you go, or at least as many places as you can. Typically, the bigger the firearm, the less comfortable it is to carry. In conjunction with that, C number 2 has to be concealability. Now, some people will say, hell, I'll just open carry. Okay, I can do that. But the thing is, in a lot of states, you can't. And in a lot of situations, you can't. My personal opinion on open carry, I think it's a bad idea. Because if you're someplace where there's a bad guy and he's wanting to do some harm, the first thing anybody with half a brain is going to do is take out the guy that's got a sidearm strapped to his belt. That's just common sense, but we all know criminals don't always have common sense. But I don't think it acts as a deterrent at all. It also, unfortunately, in the day and age we live in, is kind of like screaming fire in a crowded movie house. You're going to upset more people than not. Is that a reason not to do it? That's up to you. But personally, I'm not the type that's looking to cause any friction or make a show. But it's got to be concealable when we're talking about concealed carry. So within that realm, has to be something that makes sense for you. I covered that a little bit in this video. Caliber. We talked about that 9 versus 45, but at reasonable and legal concealed carry distances, just about any caliber is going to do. Now, I'm not a fan of carrying a 22 or a 380 ACP or something like that, but you know what? There's plenty of people who do, and as I stated earlier in this video, more people die every year from 22 long rifle than any other caliber. I think the biggest reason for that has to be commonality, the number of accidents that happen, as well as throwing in things like suicide rates and so forth. But does that mean it's as lethal as a caliber, all things being equal, as 45 or 9? No, it doesn't. But it is something to ponder when people talk about, well, that's just going to bounce off somebody. You better get something that blows a gigantic hole in them or it's not going to stop you. But caliber is going to be a consideration, and I think more than anything, for somebody who's going to carry a firearm, it has to be a caliber that they can be proficient shooting with. And that goes into my fourth C, which is competency. You have to carry a firearm that you can put rounds on target, that you can draw with relative ease, and that you practice at, which I'm a big proponent of dry fire. And just about every firearm you get, that's okay to do. And you can use snap caps if you have concerns. But if you're not competent with the firearm, it doesn't really matter what you're carrying around. That's why a lot of these smaller guns, including, as I talked about a few videos ago, the original Glock 43, which had the shorter grip, I couldn't fire that as comfortably just because it didn't fill my hand, and that helps me shoot better. So all of those 4 C's going together: comfort, concealability, caliber, and competency. These are things that need to be considered when we talk about a concealed carry firearm. And that's why, for me, the Glock 19, the Glock 43X, and many other 9mm Glocks that are out there are better concealed carry options, much better in my opinion, than carrying a 1911. So why did I make this video? Not so much for the folks that already know what they like and what they're carrying. Those folks are going to weigh in and tell me why I'm either right or why I'm wrong. But for the folks that are out there deciding, what do I want to get? What kind of firearm do I want to get? What do I want to do? Folks that don't have that experience, I'll ask you to consider the things that I'm talking about in this video, but don't just take my word for it. Go shoot some firearms at your local firearms range. If you have a firearms instructor at your disposal, ask them some questions. Do as much research as you can. If you're like me, you might start out thinking you know what kind of firearm that you want. You might end up having several others. Point is, make sure that what you do is a good fit for you. And more than anything else, just remember, it's your mind, it's your training, and it's your willingness that's going to save your behind. Your firearm is a component in that process. The gun itself isn't going to do anything for you because, as we all know, guns don't shoot themselves. Well, unless you're talking about that SIG with the drop fire problem. But anyway, this is Dr. Drake 63. I want to thank you for joining me today. If I've said anything that rattled your cage, goose fraba. Take some deep breaths before you comment. We're not here to piss anybody off, like I said. We're just here to give one man's opinion, share several others, and get you thinking a little bit. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.